trained. They can get their MBA if they want, and you can teach them marketing in a couple weekends. I mean, yet these schools are cranking out vocations and skill sets that no one really needs.
I agree completely. And if you take somebody that is in a marketing degree or in some of these business degrees that are so specialized now, that, you know, in 3-5 years with the evolution of products and technology and techniques now in the marketplace with the speed of change, they'll become obsolete soon thereafter. So if you could get somebody that's a critical thinker, that's well-read, well-rounded.
But why hasn't it been promoted? Because I really believe, I really do believe that. I think colleges are going to skew. It used to be a college education was an education to make you well-read. And then you work for the company. I mean, I'll tell you marketing, buy low, sell high. I mean, it's like, it's not rocket science. So why not just get someone well-read? But it seems like schools and business, why does businesses look down upon a liberal arts degree? I think it should be looked upon kind of, I think in high esteem. I think that also, if you combine that with work study, that might be a powerful combination.
I agree, and actually, and I don't even think you know this, I went and received a degree in English with a minor in history. So I came from that liberal arts background.
Did not know that, Chris.
And I went into the financial services industry, and in my own personal experience, it was difficult to get a job in the industry I wanted to get into because I didn't have that finance econ degree. And so it was a tremendous disadvantage in getting in the door. However, once I got in the door, I felt that I had such an advantage because these other people were well schooled in financial concepts, this, that, the other thing. But the Wall Street firms, you know, again, this is my experience, they put you in training to learn all that stuff. I was able to learn all that stuff.
That's what I'm saying.
However, being able to deal with reading, writing, communicating, understanding
critical thinking,
understanding the views of people with different backgrounds and different experiences and different perspectives, that liberal arts background gave me an enormous advantage and has really led to the success that I've had. I would say one of the hallmarks was that liberal arts degree.
Yeah, and I know this for an absolute fact that a good percentage of business is how you communicate, like presentations, written, oral communications. I remember when I first started in business, my first real job was a Fortune 500 company, and I remember they had a couple of business people there that had to go to, if you will, remedial, I mean, they were managers, writing and communications, whereas someone in liberal arts, you know, I just think, you know, kind of reeling it all in, I just wonder how self-serving higher institutions are, and also how fat and dumb and happy they are, because there's no fencing off of costs in higher ed, because they have what everyone wants. Supposedly, without a college degree, you're in big trouble. So there's no control, there's no incentive to control costs. I mean, you look at inflation and you look at cost of higher education, the two just don't mix.
And I think that within a generation that will change dramatically, whether it's online or technology or
actually,
it
Chris,
will evolve.
you just said the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
And I do believe this, I said this before in my other show, and our other show of last week. A snapshot means nothing. That's how it is right now, here today. I believe the big freight train for these bloated college infrastructure is virtual learning. I think that's going to explode the whole thing. And I think actually many colleges will go under that do not have robust distance learning programs, online educations, because that's how people are going to learn. That's a more cost effective. You don't have to go stay on campus, burn up 40 grand a year when you can be taking it in, you know, the way people learn nowadays anyway. Was at one time it was a joke. An online education, I actually designed online classes and they were a joke. They were okay, but you're missing a lot. They're getting pretty good now. I mean, a lot of it's all tied in. You're getting instant communication, you can share ideas, and there's nothing bad about them whatsoever. I think there's certain schools, unfortunately, that were ahead of the curve, that for-profit institutions, that they're a victim of their own marketing efforts, because I think degrees from some of those schools, I wouldn't suggest it. We'll just leave it at that.
But it makes sense you'd have the evolution. Technology has changed a lot of industries, and leverage that technology to be faster, more nimble, more cost effective. It should happen in the education industry.
Yeah, think about the model, Chris. If you have all these fixed costs, dorms, maintenance, infrastructure, libraries, all that huge expenditures, security, taking care of the little kiddies, all that kind of stuff, right? If you could just have you could almost have a completely virtual university, highly, great staff, great professors, and get rid of all the fixed costs and have people access your educational databases and course structures. I think you could do it for a third of the cost and be just as effective.
And don't you think a lot of the higher education costs are, it's not just the infrastructure of educating the students, so much of the draw to get students to go to the higher education isn't so much the core competency of educating, it's the great student union with the Wi-Fi and the foosball and
Chris,
and all of that stuff.
I went to school during those times. I had the foosball, didn't have the Wi-Fi.
Foosball is probably showing I'm old, right? Does anybody do foosball anymore?
Maybe it's all probably Xbox foosball. But anyway, I think it's always been around, it always will be around. It was even before my time, and it'll be after my time. But when you're spending $15,000 a year on your education, rock on.
Yes.
At 50 grand, you're starting talking about like real money. You may want to think about other alternatives to getting that education.
Absolutely. And isn't that that's the advancement of the cause of these distant learning, is that you could get as good an education as you could going to the traditional university system, as good of an education, but it's more no frills. And for a lot of American families, that's a cost-effective use of money to get their child educated, to get them prepared to go into the world and make their own way, but not have to break the bank and have lots of loans, which is out of control,
Crazy.
Student loans. And also a lot of people postpone retirement or take second jobs. You could eliminate a lot of that in a family household, but still give your child as good an education as they would. But I guess I would ask you, how does that affect like the socialization of going to school, meeting people, networking, having those life experiences, including going away on spring break?
I think it's a huge problem because I think half of the college experience is the socialization process. Some of the biggest takeaways I got out of college was meeting a person, a friend, whatever became my friend, who told me about this cool stuff. I'm not talking this, frivolous stuff, but do you know about this whole, these movies, and do you know about this, director, and do you know about this musician, do you know about this historian? And I think you miss that sitting in front of a computer.
So will distant learning be able to figure out that kind of component, or will that go by the wayside?
I think, unfortunately, we're going to live in a increasingly more isolated society, just telling you how it is. And I think that's going to be an experience only for the rich. Going away, staying at the dorms. All that fun stuff, and or people that are willing to take the risk and rack up $50,000 a year. I think if I was a student, I remember when I got out of school, and it was during a recession, the Great Depression. Just kidding. It was during a recession, and it took me like 4 months to get a job. Like I had a quasi job. It was actually an awesome job, manager of a movie theater. But for 4 years, 4 months, I was scared. But I would be real scared if I had 200,000 or 120,000 in debt. That's scary. I mean, when you're working at Showcase Cinema, making $8 or $10 an hour, but you get a couple, $5,000 of student loans. That's a lot different than
Absolutely.
200 grand.
I think I had heard, and maybe you know this, that you could actually take courses now at Harvard, like Harvard classes, and I don't think you necessarily get credits for them, but you could take the same courses at Harvard that a student at Harvard is taking. I got to look into that because I'm pretty sure somebody
there's like portals and Harvard things that so they don't whittle down or water down their admission standards, but you have access to their classes.
Okay, but is it something that you get a degree in, or you just do it?
You just do it to enhance your knowledge. But global competition. Think of this concept. Certain countries, like in India, they speak English, or they can hire, Americans or English people. Don't think that education can't go global. Don't think you can't lock into a University of New Delhi, and I'm not making any jokes, I'm being
Sure.
honest with
No,
you.
I could see
and
that.
get a top flight education for 10 grand. Why not? I mean, you don't want to get, University of Bangladesh, but if you had University of Warsaw, I mean, in Poland, might be just a great school, and it could be an eighth of the cost. I think global educational competition would come to the forefront eventually.
And wouldn't that help out, like we talked before, about like the dislocation of, the needs of employers versus employees? And in today's environment, they say, somebody coming into the workforce, they're going to have multiple careers. If education and retraining was less expensive, it would become easier for those transitions down the line, that maybe you have to go get a second degree. But you know what? If I spend $200,000 for my first degree and 9 years later my industry is dried up, I need to make a change, it's kind of tough to go spend another $200,000.
And that's where I think our, again, mismanaged government comes into play. I have actually been in a situation where I was unemployed for a little bit of time, not a fun experience, and I also learned a lot about our unemployment system. Again, run by bureaucrats, not business driven. And I think it happened to me when I was younger, but I know a lot of people who are older or mid-career. And why not have some kind of a, through the community colleges, programs designed to get you up and running in, might not be, you're never going to be a VP of marketing anymore, but get you skilled in medical coding for a year and have the government, you don't have to pay, again, you don't have money when you're unemployed. Hello, genius. But the government will fund that education.
Yeah.
But when you get out, there is no student loan. It's 5% of your income will go to the government until it's paid off. Very simple solution. Give people a leg up, but you get this thing because government, it's like everything else. They don't care. They're not really compassionate. That is a total misnomer. The unemployment department, whatever it's called, are not interested really in you getting you employed. It's like how many people they have under they're managing, how many caseworkers they have. If they were really interested in you getting out and having you retooling, they would have programs for you to retool. They actually penalize you for working.
Yes.
So once again, ladies and gentlemen, we have another example of why we're being disserved. But also, I think we had a great discussion, Chris, because, I think the big takeaway is the false sense of security of a snapshot in history. Talk about bloated educations and other kind of things. When there's a vacuum, something happens to fill that vacuum. And I think there is a vacuum in higher education because $200,000, that's talking about a lifetime of servitude almost. And if you're the financial person, you took $200,000 over 40 years. Now if you're in the opportunity cost, that's a lot of money. But we are again closing another segment of the Business Buzz. Chris Calandra, thanks so much for joining us again on the Business Buzz and being our esteemed co-host. And thank all of you for tuning in to our not so newly, but our recreated Business Buzz format. We'll be back next week with another exciting show. Wednesday at 8. Thanks for tuning in.